I'm going to have to speak my truth, but I'm also going to protect you. So if I got to look like the adulterous wife to make sure you're good, I'm going to do it.
Wow.
Y'all. So, and that wasn't the case. But I wanted him to be okay. Now, also in that moment, two things. As I'm moving forward, I'm also moving backwards. Because of what I realized at that moment, I got in my martyrdom bag. And what that is for me is, I hadn't quite learned how to love myself and not leave Will on the side of the road. And I hadn't learned how to love Will and not leave myself on the side of the road. And in that moment, because I felt so bad that he was in this situation, I decided I'm going to love you, Will, and I'm going to leave myself at the side of the road.
Sheesh.
And I wouldn't have known that that was an aspect that I needed to heal if it hadn't been for my kids, my mother, my friends were so hurt that I had done that to myself.
Yeah, because they actually asked you afterwards. Now, mind you, smart businesswoman. They own their content. She could have killed it.
Yeah.
She could have said, "Oh, heck no, no, this didn't work as planned."
Yeah.
But you did it anyway.
Yeah, my manager, Miguel, Ellen Rakuten, who's the producer, they begged me. My PR, not Karen Sensor, they all begged me. They were like, please don't do this, please don't do this. And two things, I was like, I needed people to know. First, I wasn't going to be emotionally blackmailed.
Right, yes ma'am.
I was like, no. Hold up.
No.
I'm going to put myself out there.
See, alright, so first and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahushai, Ba'Shem Kakodash. We say double and say apostle and elders agree most on our rule, but our teachers or apostles in truth, and we see salutations. So the outcomes that they push you with no truth and sincerity, day in and day out, in a constantly in season or a season, we say Shalom. And once again, going into our video here and touching upon, hey, such is the way of an adulterous woman. Matter of fact, I'm going to start with that. This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 30. Right, and I'm going to read from verse 20. Right, this is the book of Proverbs, chapter 30, verse 20. It says, such is the way of an adulterous woman. She eateth and wipeth her mouth and said, I have done no wickedness. And this is a perfect example of that. Being that adulterous woman and wiping her mouth and say she have done no wrong. Now, even when you're watching the video, for those who may not know, this is Will Smith's wife. And obviously over the years, he heard about the controversy that took place with her and Will Smith, how she slept with her friend's son. You could see the picture to the right hand side, right? And over the years, it's a topic that has always pop up. She herself continued to speak about it. They usually make news and so forth, on and off. I saw this video and I read the headline and I said, what, let me listen to it. And what really, caused me to do this video was at the beginning here.
Speak my truth.
So she says she come to speak her truth, right?
I'm also going to protect you. So if I got to look like the adulterous wife.
And pause. She look like the adulterous wife, which you are, right? All these situations that happen, you slept. And you know how it goes with Hollywood, right? But this is a perfect example of how modern women think, right? The concept, the way how they operate. That is where the apostles and elders will continue to tell men how to be single. because this is an example, right? So I'm gonna display it here. So that was a piece that I was like, you know what, through the spirit, I'll do a video, because a guy once said, you know, there's a woman speaking some bullshit, and in the midst of her, there's other woman dumber than her saying yes, queen, right? That was a quote, right? That a guy once said on the internet, and it stands straight true to this day, right? When a woman is saying some bullshit, there's always other woman around her that's more dumb than her, telling her yes, queen, or clapping or making the noise that you just heard, right? Let me play back.
To make sure you're,
You know, play back again.
I gotta look like the adulterous wife.
That, you know, that's dumb. And that will make me start with this Proverbs 30, verse 20. Let me just read it over. Such is the way of an adulterous woman. That is what she said. To look, no, you are an adulterous woman. Right? You see me, all these rest of women that listening to you fall in here. A majority of these women outside here are, right? It's a she eat it and wiped her mouth and said, I have done no wickedness. So this if you when you listen on the little piece of the clip, you can see that she wanted to take no wrong. Right? You know, she wanted what she did was try to switch it to make it seem like it was someone else's fault when it's literally yours. Right? But again, an adulterous woman wiped her mouth and said she done what? She have done no wrong. Now let me jump to another scripture here. Matter of fact. 1 minute. All right. Let me jump down to the scripture here. I'm going to go to the book of Sirach, right? Chapter 42. Sirach, chapter 42, right? And let me read from verse. Let me read from verse 12, right? So this is the book of Sirach, chapter 42, verse 12. Matter of fact, let me read from verse 11. It says, keep a sure watch over a shameless daughter, lest she make thee a laughing stock to thine enemies, and a byword in the city, and a reproach among the people, and make thee ashamed before the multitude. Hey, that's a crazy thing. Because just like that, you know, a man that once had a crispy clean, so-called crispy clean record, you know, all around the world, that was just spoiling a matter it quick. You understand? Fast. Right? And who did that? A woman. Right? You see, verse 12, you say, behold not everybody's beauty, and sit not in the midst of women. It say, for from garments cometh a moth, and from woman wickedness. And that is what you see here. You know, and that is what you're hearing. In the midst of much woman, that way you get wickedness. That way the scripture says, for from garments cometh a moth, and from woman wickedness. And that is where you get. You start a conversation saying you look like the adulterer. No, you are that. And then you had women in the crowd bowing, play it again.
To make sure you're good, I'ma do it.
Wow.
Y'all. So, and that.
So you hear the other woman there? You know, there's a whole pack of wickedness she just talk. But if you hear them in the background, like if they're doing karate or some kind of shit, right? Then you hear the other woman on the mic ball, y'all, like if she going and say something so profound. But again, as the scripture say, and sit not in the midst of women, for from garments cometh a moth, and from woman wickedness. And that is where you get. There is no denying the scriptures. This is what you get. This is a perfect example of that. Right? from women, that is what come from them, wickedness. Because no one there in time to say, well, hey, you know what? You was wrong. No, everybody but he, you know. They say better is the churchlessness of a man than a courteous woman. A woman, I say, which bringeth shame and reproach. And that is what she brought unto her husband. Shame and reproach. Right? That is what I believe in Proverbs. Right? Say, a righteous woman. This should be paraphrasing. A righteous woman is more precious than rubies. You understand? So that is just to show you how precious a good woman is. But you're not even going to get it outside there. Because majority, this is an example of majority of this woman mindset. You know? This is the majority of these woman mindset. Do these adulterous acts, then wipe them out and say they have done wrong. And then they try to switch it and make it seem like if it's you. Right? But that is what you get. That is what they get. You know? Now let me jump to the book of Sirach chapter 25. Matter of fact, 25. Well, let me bring to the script I'm trying to get here. Was it 25 or 26? Right? I believe it was 26. Right? To Surah 26 and I want to go straight to this. Right. Surah 26 and I'm going to read from verse 22. It says, "An harlot shall be counted as spittle." So this is what it is. All these women here that are agreeing and so forth is whores. There is no gain around it. You know, there's a situation that happened recently where it looked like an Edomite man. He killed a Jake woman, right? And I believe it happened some days ago. There's a lot. So they ain't fully, the case ain't fully been, how to pay it fair. It hasn't been rectified yet, where it confirmed that this actually took place. But from the reports that's been put out is that most likely the Edomite man killed her, right? After, I should say. And you know, some of the information coming out, as I say, it's just hearsay, you know, you're just seeing certain things, is that she was an escort, right? And you know whatever took place. And that is what's going on. A lot of these women outside here is harlots, is whores, right? So and there is a scripture say, "And harlot shall be accounted as spittle." And that is what they actually account of. All these women in the crowd, they're about, you know, yes, and all these things. That is what they basically it. You know, hey, all these women who sit down in this interview, you know the kind of trouble they must be given their man home. Hey, man, it was a crazy situation right now, right? It's a an harlot shall be accounted as spittle, but a married woman is a tower against death to her husband. It's a wicked woman is given as a portion to a wicked man, but a godly woman is given to them that fear the Lord. No, yet also at the watch in Will Smith. In Will Smith early years, there were a lot of things come out about what he did in the industry, you know. And you know, again, they call it what? Hollywood. So a wicked woman is given unto what? A wicked man. So let's go down to verse 24. You see, a dishonest woman contemneth shame, but an honest woman shall reverence her husband. And that is what it is. Hey, the scriptures don't lie. A dishonest woman contemneth shame, and that is what she bring. right? But a honest woman will reverence her husband. To an honest woman, that is what she could do. She will reverence her husband, and this honest one would not, and that is what he gained here. You know, it say a shameless woman shall be counted as a dog, as a what? As a dog. But she that is shamefaced will fear the Lord, right? And that is where it is. A shameless woman shall be counted as a dog, right? Surah 25, and then let's go straight to verse. Let me go straight to verse 24. It says, of the woman came the beginning of sin, and through her we all die. Hey, you know, these type of women you have to stay away from. You understand? Heavily. Because these kind of trouble, the kind of pain they go pay you through. You know, further up in that same surah, I can tell you, rather dwell with a dragon and a lion than to dwell with a wicked woman. You know? All these women do is just cause havoc. Right? So, once again, I give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yoshai, Ba'ashem Kakodash. We say, Deliverance Apostle, and let a great Muslim rule our teachers, our person should. And we say salutations, so they came to the push with no truth and sincerity, day in and day out in a constantly in season or season. We say, Shalom.